Welcome to the deep dive. We basically grab a whole load of information, news, reports, you name it, and pull out the really important, interesting bits for you.
Yeah, think of it as the highlights reel. Saves you wading through everything.
Exactly. And today we're diving headfirst into the crypto and blockchain world.
Specifically looking at what happened between, let's see, April 4th and April 14th, 2025. It was a pretty busy 10 days.
Right. We've sifted through a bunch of news stories to give you a clear picture.
We'll cover market swings, some big regulatory shifts in the U.S., and maybe some new tech that's popping up.
Sounds good. So yeah, should give you a good handle on what's been going on. Ready to jump in?
Let's do it. Where should we start?
How about that Amantri token situation? That sounded pretty
Oh,
dramatic.
yeah, the OM token.
Mm-hmm.
On April 13th, it just collapsed. We're talking a 90% drop.
90% in one day.
Yep. It went from around $6.10 down to something like 43 cents at its lowest point. A massive, massive fall.
Wow. What
Yeah.
triggered that? Any specific reason?
Well, the main story circulating involves allegations of insider trading. Potential insider trading, I should say.
Okay. What does that mean in this context?
It looks like just before the price tanked, some large holders moved a lot of OM tokens onto exchanges.
Lot meaning?
Around 14.27 million tokens, which at the time was worth something like $91 million.
And they moved that much right before a 90% crash.
Exactly. Onto exchanges like OKX. So, the timing looks suspicious.
Yeah, that definitely raises eyebrows, suggests maybe someone knew something was coming.
Precisely. It hits at those core concerns in crypto, doesn't it? Transparency, governance within these projects.
Absolutely. When you see that kind of move followed by a crash, it makes people question the integrity of the market, or at least that specific project.
For sure. It's a stark reminder of the volatility still present and, how crucial trust and clear rules are.
Okay. So a rough patch for Monterey holders. Let's shift over to the U.S. Sounds like things are moving on the regulatory front. President Trump signed a bill.
That's right. He signed a bill that essentially kills off an IRS rule.
Which rule is that again?
The one that tried to classify decentralized finance DeFi platforms as brokers for tax reporting.
Ah, right. I remember the crypto industry really pushed back hard against that.
They did. Their main argument was, DeFi platforms often just don't have the user data the IRS wanted. Is not how they're built.
So forcing them to comply would have been technically very difficult, maybe impossible, without changing their fundamental nature.
Exactly. It was seen as trying to fit a square peg in a round hole and potentially really damaging to innovation in the DeFi space.
So this nullification is generally seen as good news by the industry, part of maybe a wider deregulatory trend.
That seems to be the interpretation, yeah. It aligns with the sense that this administration wants fewer restrictions on crypto.
But like most things, there's another side to it, concerns being raised.
Definitely. One of the big ones is potential conflicts of interest.
Because
The Trump family's increasing involvement in crypto. You have World Liberty Financial, reportedly backed by Trump's sons.
right, they launched a stablecoin, didn't they? And something else.
A stablecoin and a meme coin, yeah. So you have the president's family launching crypto ventures while his administration is easing regulations on the sector.
Yeah, you can see why that might raise some questions about optics, at the very least.
And it goes a bit further. There are reports suggesting federal agencies might be easing up their oversight.
Like the SEC.
The SEC, yeah. Apparently, they've been less aggressive, especially with firms that might have ties to administration donors. That's the allegation anyway.
And wasn't there something about the Justice Department, too?
Yes, quite significant. The DOJ announced they're reducing enforcement actions. Specifically, they said they won't prosecute exchanges, dealers, mixers, or wallet providers just for crimes committed by their users.
Wow. So shifting the responsibility entirely onto the users, that's a major policy change.
It's a huge shift from how things were previously approached. It signals, a much more hands-off stance from law enforcement towards the platforms themselves.
Okay, so a lot happening on the executive side. How is this playing out in Congress? Are lawmakers all on the same page?
Yeah.
Especially with bipartisan bills in the works?
Well, that's where it gets complicated. It seems the Trump family's crypto activities, especially World Liberty Financial, and their stablecoin plans,
Yeah.
are actually making some Republican lawmakers a bit uneasy.
Really? Even within the GOP, why?
Concerns about public perception, potential risks, maybe the appearance of self-dealing, perhaps. It's causing some friction.
Interesting. So this could throw a wrench in legislative efforts. like
Yeah.
that Genius Act.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
The Genius Act is specifically about regulating stablecoins, trying to create a clear framework. It needs bipartisan support.
And where does that act stand now?
It actually passed the Senate Finance Committee, which is a step forward, supposedly heading for a full Senate vote. But these internal GOP reservations, linked to the Trump family's ventures, could make getting enough votes trickier. It complicates the bipartisan path.
Fascinating. So some Republicans are worried, but not all. I think Senator Moreno wasn't raising objections.
That's right. So you see differing views even within the party. It just shows how complex and, frankly, politically charged crypto regulation still is. No easy consensus.
Definitely a space to watch. Okay, let's change tack again. Algorand, hearing more buzz about that lately. What's the deal?
Yeah, Algorand's getting more attention. People are talking about it as a possible, alternative to Bitcoin. Some are even calling it a game changer.
Game changer is strong language in this space. What makes it stand out? What's the pitch?
Supporters point to its tech. They argue it's faster, can handle way more transactions, better scalability, and is much more energy efficient compared to Bitcoin's proof of work.
So speed and green credentials, essentially.
Those are big selling points, yeah. The potential to process transactions much quicker and be more environmentally sustainable. They see it competing with Ethereum too, not just Bitcoin.
Okay, but what are the downsides? Or the criticisms? There must be some.
Of course,
Yeah.
critics often bring up security aspects and centralization.
So?
They argue Algorand's way of reaching consensus might be less battle-tested or potentially less resistant to certain attacks than Bitcoin's model. And some feel its governance isn't as purely decentralized as Bitcoin maximalists would like.
So it's kind of a trade-off. Maybe faster, maybe more scalable, but perhaps with perceived compromises on maximum decentralization or a different security profile.
That's a pretty good way to put it. Different philosophies, different design choices, whether it can actually carve out a major space alongside Bitcoin and Ethereum. Well, that's the big question, but it's definitely on the radar.
Got it. Okay, let's quickly touch on some administration moves again, appointments and policies.
Right. President Trump nominated Brian Quintenz to head the CFTC.
The Commodity Futures Trading Commission. And Quintenz is known for being
Very pro-crypto. He's a former CFTC commissioner himself, advocated for the industry, and has worked in crypto venture capital.
So putting a known crypto advocate in charge of a key regulator, that sends a pretty clear signal.
Absolutely. It reinforces that message of support for the industry, aiming for a more, shall we say, friendly regulatory environment.
And you mentioned the SEC earlier, signs of them softening their stance too.
There are indications, yeah. The big news was the SEC reportedly dropping lawsuits against major exchanges like Coinbase and Kraken.
Dropping them entirely.
That's what the reports suggest, which could be seen as a big step back from the more aggressive enforcement posture we saw previously, again, aligning with the overall administration direction.
Interesting. Less confrontation, maybe more acceptance.
Seems to be the trend, yes.
Yeah.
And adding to that, the administration's also talking about creating a national cryptocurrency stockpile.
A national stockpile of crypto. What would be the point of that?
The stated goal is to kind of further boost the U.S. digital asset industry, explore ways to integrate crypto more into the financial system. It's quite ambitious.
And they formed a working group, too.
Yeah, a cryptocurrency working group within the government.
Yep.
So several initiatives pointing towards not just allowing crypto, but actively supporting it at a federal level.
Okay. Wow. We've covered a lot of ground. Let's try and pull this together.
Oh, yeah. Good idea. So we started with Mantratra, a real reminder of market volatility and why things like transparency and trust are just fundamental.
Right. Then the big shifts in U.S. regulation, deregulation efforts, the whole conflict of interest discussion around the Trump family and how that's maybe complicating legislation.
We looked at Algorand as an example of the tech continuing to evolve, new potential players emerging, challenging the established names.
And finally, those administration signals, the CFTC nomination, the SEC possibly backing off, this national stockpile idea, all pointing towards a more supportive government stance.
Exactly. So you have market events, regulatory changes, tech innovation. It's all interconnected, all shaping where digital assets are heading.
And understanding these pieces, even just from this 10-day snapshot, feels pretty crucial for anyone involved or even just interested in this space.
Definitely. It's moving fast, and these developments have real consequences. This period, early April 2025, was quite telling.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe a final thought for our listeners to chew on. With regulation changing so much and new tech popping up, what do you think are the biggest opportunities or maybe the biggest risks in crypto over the next few months? Something to ponder.